The cause of death was listed as burns sustained from a house fire, but the medical examiner disagreed. The postmortem interval was estimated at 12 hours based on body temperature and lividity patterns, yet the physical evidence suggested this estimate was incorrect. Upon closer examination of the deceased's lungs, acute inhalation injuries were found, indicative of lethal smoke and toxic gases ingested prior to any significant thermal burns. These findings revealed that the primary cause of death was respiratory failure due to inhalation, rather than direct burn trauma. The presence of carbon monoxide and other volatile substances in the airways confirmed a rapid onset of incapacitation from inhaling hot, noxious fumes. This critical insight altered the timeline and understanding of how the deceased met their end, emphasizing the lethal nature of the smoke and gases over external burns. Chapter: Case Background. The incident occurred on December 14th at a single-family residence located in the western suburbs of Chicago. The report was made to emergency services shortly after midnight by a neighbor who noticed smoke emanating from the home and observed no signs of movement inside or outside the property. Upon arrival, firefighters were met with heavy smoke conditions and reported visible flames in the lower level of the structure. Initial rescue efforts focused on entering the premises to locate any occupants. However, these attempts were hampered by the intensity of the fire. Once the blaze was brought under control, approximately 2 hours later, emergency personnel discovered the deceased within a bedroom on the upper floor. The initial assumption at the scene was that the individual had succumbed due to smoke inhalation and thermal injuries sustained during the fire. Given the advanced stage of decomposition already evident, it became clear that an immediate forensic examination would be necessary to determine the exact cause and manner of death. Chapter: Initial findings upon arrival at the residence. First responders noted a pervasive acrid smoke odor and observed structural damage consistent with intense fire activity. The deceased was found in a prone position near the entrance of the dwelling, exhibiting signs of extreme distress, indicative of acute inhalation injuries. No visible external thermal burns were present on the body, leading to an immediate suspicion that death resulted from respiratory complications rather than direct thermal trauma. Initial medical assessment at the scene revealed petechial hemorrhages around the neck and upper chest region, consistent with smoke inhalation-induced pulmonary edema. The lack of overt burn marks suggested rapid incapacitation due to inhaling toxic fumes prior to significant exposure to flames or heat sources. Given these observations, the initial manner of death was classified as a probable homicide, pending further forensic examination. These findings prompted an immediate investigation into the source and nature of the fire, as well as potential signs of forced entry or evidence suggesting foul play. The absence of defensive wounds and the positioning of the body raised concerns about premeditation in the crime's execution. Chapter: Forensic investigation at the fire origin site. Investigators collected charred wood fragments, melted electrical wiring, and residue indicative of flammable liquids. The deceased exhibited a high concentration of soot in the upper airway consistent with an acute inhalation injury pattern. Notable were the absence of thermal burns on extremities typically used for escape, suggesting rapid incapacitation due to smoke inhalation. Charred clothing adhered to the body provided evidence of positioning at the time of death. All collected items were meticulously documented and sealed in individual evidence bags. A strict chain of custody was maintained throughout transportation to the forensic laboratory. Unexpectedly, no accelerants were found despite initial suspicions of arson based on fire patterns. Autopsy findings revealed acute inhalation injuries as the primary cause of death in the deceased. To elucidate the nature and extent of these injuries, several specific tests were conducted on lung tissue samples obtained during the postmortem examination. Gas chromatography mass spectrometry, GCMS, was employed to detect carbon monoxide and cyanide concentrations, with detection thresholds set at 1% for carboxyhemoglobin levels and 0.3 mg/L for cyanide in blood. Histological sections of lung tissue were stained with hematoxylin and eosin, H and E, revealing widespread pulmonary edema, hemosiderosis, and acute bronchial inflammation. Microscopic analysis also identified thermal injury to the upper airway epithelium, consistent with inhalation of superheated gases. Additionally, electron microscopy confirmed the presence of carbon particles within alveolar macrophages, indicative of smoke inhalation. These findings corroborate a scenario where the deceased inhaled toxic combustion products during the fire incident, leading to rapid respiratory compromise and death. The investigation into the cause and circumstances of death, in this case, involved a meticulous analysis of burn patterns on both the deceased and the structural components of the scene. Burn patterns were consistent with an origin point near the living room, indicative of rapid flame spread facilitated by synthetic furnishings and carpeting. Smoke marks and charring on walls suggested upward movement of flames and heat, characteristic of flashover conditions. The presence of soot in respiratory passages confirmed acute inhalation injuries as a primary cause of death. Postmortem interval was estimated at approximately 2 hours post-fire ignition, based on the state of rigor mortis and body temperature. This timeline corroborated witness statements regarding the time frame of fire detection, but contradicted initial reports suggesting an arsonist's involvement due to lack of evidence supporting forced entry or deliberate accelerants. In the case of acute inhalation injuries resulting from fire exposure, forensic findings revealed significant soot deposition in the respiratory tract and the presence of carbon monoxide and cyanide derivatives in blood samples. These indicators suggest rapid incapacitation due to smoke inhalation prior to extensive thermal burns. Burn patterns on the body surface were consistent with post-incapacitation movement, corroborating evidence of a swift onset of unconsciousness from toxic fumes. The expert would testify that the combination of chemical analysis and burn pattern interpretation supports acute inhalation as the primary cause of incapacitation, with subsequent fire damage occurring after loss of mobility. Conclusive evidence includes toxicological findings. Interpretive aspects pertain to the exact sequence of events leading to death based on burn patterns alone. Chapter Resolution. The final determination of the deceased's cause of death was acute inhalation injuries secondary to smoke inhalation during a fire incident. The evidence conclusively proved that the primary mechanism of death was respiratory failure due to toxic gas exposure, rather than thermal burns or trauma from falling objects. Critical in establishing this central finding were the burn patterns observed on the deceased's lungs and airways. Histopathological analysis revealed extensive chemical irritation and inflammation indicative of acute inhalation injury. Additionally, trace evidence including soot deposits within the respiratory tract confirmed exposure to smoke and toxic combustion products. Initially, thermal injuries on the skin were considered primary due to their severity, leading investigators to focus on external burns as a key cause of death. However, further examination revealed that, while thermal injuries contributed to overall morbidity, they did not directly result in fatal outcomes. Instead, forensic evidence indicated rapid incapacitation due to inhalation injury, which led to compromised respiratory function and subsequent fatality. This shift from initial assessment underscores the importance of comprehensive toxicological analysis alongside traditional autopsy findings for accurate cause determination in fire-related deaths. This case underscores the critical role of comprehensive burn pattern analysis in elucidating the mechanisms of death in fire-related fatalities, particularly focusing on acute inhalation injuries. Integration of forensic pathology and fire dynamics is essential for accurate determinations. The file remains open,